I died at the age of 89. They called it a joyous funeral before my casket. Everyone who came to pay their respects said I was a lucky woman, a faithful husband, dutiful stepchildren. They all thought I had been bedridden for years, no different from a lifeless body without thoughts or feelings. But only I knew. That breathing tube had imprisoned me on the bed, in the storage room, even under the staircase for nearly 15 years. All so they could keep collecting my generous pension every month. Until the stench of my decaying body could no longer be hidden, David Miller finally decided to show mercy and let me die. He shed 2 cloudy tears and said softly, "In this life I owe you. But I can't let our kids starve. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too strong, clutching all the money and refusing to let go. You left me no choice but to keep you there. Now that it's over, you're finally free." After finishing his performance, David turned away and used my funeral money to buy his ex-wife a big gold bracelet, saying it was to thank her for all the hardships she'd endured through the years. They reunited as a loving family, trampling over my bones to celebrate their happiness. I died filled with bitterness and hatred. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. This time, I took the initiative to apply for a position as a technical assistant at a rural branch, determined to stay as far away from David Miller as possible. But unexpectedly, he brought his 2 children all the way across the country and knelt before me. "Sarah," he pleaded, "my virtuous wife, please come home with me." I had returned to the very night of the celebration dinner for Sophie Miller, his daughter, who had just been admitted into high school. The pain from my past life, the years of confinement, the suffocating smell of that cramped room, still lingered around me, making it hard to tell if this was real or not. At that moment, Sophie's eyes turned red. She angrily threw her chopsticks onto the table and shouted, "You're not my real mother. Who gave you the right to decide everything for me? Just because you couldn't have children, doesn't mean you can control my life and my brother's. Let me tell you something. In front of my mom, you were just a concubine, a stepmother who could never raise her head." The chopsticks hit the floor, wine splashed everywhere, and the sharp smell of alcohol pulled me back to reality. I looked up at her, her face still young, yet her eyes were filled with open disgust. In my previous life, after the accident, I had woken up briefly. Looking into her cold, emotionless eyes, I had begged, "Sophie, I raised you for so many years. Please don't save me. Let me die." By then, she had already become the director of a hospital. She sneered and said, "Mother, you think you deserve that title? Aunt Sarah, you're not allowed to die. My mom's still waiting for your pension so she can go on vacation. You know she's never worked a day in her life. Don't worry, I won't let you feel any pain." And she kept her word. I didn't feel pain, not physical pain at least. But I was kept alive by that breathing tube for 15 long years, long enough to smell my own body decaying. Helpless and despairing, I closed my eyes and fought back tears. The celebration tonight had been my idea, a way to thank Sophie. She hadn't gotten into that top high school by her own ability. I had spent money, time, and countless favors to help her get in. Afterward, I hired private tutors to raise her grades, pouring money into lessons as if it were water, all to give her a smooth path to success. But I never expected her to hate me for it. She hated my strength, hated me for ruining her dream of becoming a famous designer, hated me for standing between her and the boy she liked at the vocational school. Now the scene she caused tonight, all of it, was just to force me to let her drop out of the prestigious school and transfer to that design program at the vocational school. I looked around the room. David Miller sat at the head of the table, his face dark and sour. Sitting beside him was Laura Chen, Sophie's biological mother, his ex-wife. When our eyes met, Laura gave me a triumphant smile. She wore a perfectly tailored cheongsam that accentuated her figure, making the faded work uniform I had on look cheap and laughably out of place. Next to her sat Ryan Miller, David's eldest son, glaring at me with open hostility. I almost found it amusing. This entire celebration dinner, paid for and arranged by me, yet the 4 of them sat together in the most honored seats, as if this were their home. David even had the audacity to speak with self-righteous logic, saying, "Laura is Sophie's biological mother. If she doesn't sit here, what, should I treat her like an outsider?" In my previous life, Laura never worked a day, yet she was obsessed with looking beautiful. David's salary wasn't enough to support their family, so they turned their eyes toward me. A woman who couldn't have children, the perfect choice to feed their whole household. I earned a high salary and couldn't bear children, so naturally, I was expected to raise David's kids as if they were my own. Only when I died did I realize that every month, as soon as David got paid, he handed all his money over to Laura. How absurd. For years I spent my entire income raising those two children, managing the household without a single complaint. And in the end, it was all part of their careful scheme, one that left me dead and broken, not a single bone intact. Death had opened my eyes. I was nothing more than an outsider, a guest sitting in the wrong seat. I let out a faint laugh and said calmly, "Sophie's right, her real mother is sitting right here. What business do I, a stepmother, have spending money and effort for her? Isn't that right?" The moment I said that, Laura's eyes instantly turned red. She glanced at me pitifully and said in a choked voice, "Sarah, if you don't like me visiting the kids, I'll leave right away. I never wanted to make you uncomfortable. You don't understand how a mother feels. I can endure the bitterness, but the children are still young. Please don't make things hard for them." Then she stood up, face pale as if she'd just been humiliated. Sophie threw herself into her mother's arms, crying so hard her whole body trembled. "Mom, don't go, don't leave. The one who should leave is her, that woman, Sarah Miller. It's just a school placement. She forced me into a top school for her pride. I don't want it." Mother and daughter clung to each other, sobbing, as if they'd suffered the greatest injustice in the world. David pulled both of them into his arms, his eyes filled with sympathy for them. But when he turned to me, all that was left in his gaze was irritation. "They're just kids. Why do you always have to make a scene, Sarah? Do you have to ruin everyone's mood before you're satisfied? You've never had children of your own. Maybe that's why you can't understand a mother's feelings. This dinner was supposed to be a celebration for Sophie, but you've made it all about yourself." Laura lifted her chin proudly from his embrace, her eyes full of smug defiance. That single phrase, "You're not her real mother," erased everything I had ever done, piercing straight through my heart. David knew exactly how to hurt me. In my previous life, my inability to bear children had always been my deepest wound. Society's cruel notion that children are your old age security made it worse. Instead of adopting, I agreed to become stepmother to his two kids. At first, David had coaxed me sweetly, saying his children were gentle and obedient, that they would treat me well, that one day they would be filial to me. But after we married, I learned the truth. Their biological mother was still in the picture, and they still saw each other often, as if the divorce had never happened. Because I couldn't have children, I lived in constant self-doubt, completely under David's control. My spirit crushed. He never hesitated to remind me, "Laura gave you the chance to be a mother without suffering through childbirth. You should be grateful to her. Raising a child isn't the same as giving birth. Of course, they're not close to you. You don't share their blood. You haven't even done enough to deserve gratitude, yet you expect them to treat you like their real mom? Don't be such a hypocrite." Every word he spoke was a knife, and in my past life, I had let him cut me until there was nothing left. A wave of bitterness rose in my chest, sharp and choking, like thorns caught in my throat. The pain wasn't from David Miller's cruelty, it came from realizing how foolish I had once been. Back then, I believed that holding on to him was grasping a lifeline, that being with him could somehow make up for my inability to have children. David looked at me with smug satisfaction and said coldly, "Apologize to Laura." I blinked my dry eyes and let out a small laugh, my voice calm but icy. "And what exactly should I apologize to her for? What did I say that was wrong? Or do you also think that the money and effort I spent for your daughter's future was a mistake?" David froze, clearly not expecting me to talk back. For years I had been so obedient, so compliant, that he'd forgotten I was his wife. He'd come to see me as nothing more than a nanny. But when he finally reacted, his expression turned dark and twisted. "What the hell do you mean, acting like you did it all for my daughter? Sarah, have you lost your mind today? Listen to yourself. How could you say something so cruel? You've really disappointed Sophie and Ryan." They've always treated you like their real mother. Like their real mother? I couldn't hold it in anymore. A laugh burst out of me, but tears followed immediately, spilling down my cheeks. A real mother, David? In the 7 years since I married you, have they ever once called me Mom? You were the one who told them not to, remember? You said if they called me that, it would make Laura sad. Did you already forget? David frowned, clearly irritated, trying to suppress his discomfort. You're seriously bringing up something that small in front of everyone? Enough already, Sarah. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Stop crying as if you're the only one who's been wronged. I wiped my tears, ready to respond, when suddenly Ryan, who had been silent the whole time, let out a mocking laugh. His voice was cold and dripping with scorn. Aunt Sarah, he said, emphasizing the words, for years my sister and I have lived under your control. My dad gives you all his salary every month, and now he doesn't even have a cent left for himself. And today, you ruin my sister's celebration, insult our mom in front of everyone, all because you want to force us to call you Mom. Isn't that right? I wiped away the last of my tears and looked at him, the boy I had once cared for like my own. His eyes were full of hatred, burning so deeply it could cut through bone. Even in my previous life before I died, he had still despised me. He truly believed that I had been the woman who destroyed his parents' marriage, the one who tore his family apart. Unlike Sophie, Ryan had been nearly 10 when he came to live with me. At that time, Laura had neglected him so badly that he was thin, pale, and too weak to speak. It was I who had cooked porridge for him, spoon by spoon, feeding him until his strength returned. It was I who spent all my savings on milk powder to nourish him, so that even through high school, he could still have milk every night before bed. And yet, every bowl of porridge I cooked, every bottle of milk I bought, only raised a sharper blade that would one day stab me in the heart. I remembered his words from my previous life, his voice still cold and indifferent. Let her stay in the corner of the house as long as we get the money. What can a bedridden old woman do? Crawl out to complain? When she dies, just toss her in the river. Why should I bother wearing mourning for her? She's not worth it. Now looking at him, his face so much like David's, I couldn't help the chill that crept into my eyes. Yes, he truly was David's son, carrying the same blood, with the same cruelty, the same heartless nature. I shook my head slowly, my voice steady and clear. Don't call me Mom. It makes my skin crawl. And another thing, I never took a single dollar from your father. Ryan, you should feel lucky that you and Sophie aren't my children. Because if I had ever given birth to two ungrateful, heartless kids like you, I would have strangled them in my womb before they ever saw daylight. No sooner had I finished speaking than David lunged forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sound of it cracked through the banquet hall, sharp, cold, and merciless. David Miller froze where he stood. He stared at me, stunned, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how to start. I stood there too, motionless, my cheek numb, ears ringing from the echo of his slap. The room fell utterly silent. The only sound was Laura Chen's soft sobbing. "This is all my fault," she cried. "I shouldn't have come here and ruined the love between you two. Sarah, please don't hate Sophie, and don't blame Ryan either. I'll leave now. I should have died the day I gave birth to them." She sobbed harder and then ran out the door, tears streaming down her pale face. David didn't spare me another glance. He rushed after her, but not before throwing me a sharp, warning glare. "If anything happens to Laura because of this, I'll never forgive you." Their two children followed right behind, crying and calling after their mother. The guests who had come to celebrate froze awkwardly, watching the chaos unfold. None of them dared approach me. One by one, they quietly left, leaving behind only the sound of their retreating footsteps. In the spacious restaurant, I was the only one left sitting there, utterly alone. I didn't know how long I stayed like that before I finally gathered myself and returned to the factory office. When I told the director I wanted to transfer to a lower branch technical support team, he was taken aback. "Sarah, have you thought this through? The conditions in the Southwest are harsh, and the equipment there is lacking. Besides, you have a special situation. 2 kids at home who need your care. Did David agree to this?" I touched the swelling on my cheek and gave him a bitter smile. "Director, You and the factory have already done so much for me over the years. The children are grown now. I want to do my part to help ease the factory's burden. As for David, he's always encouraged me to work more. I'm sure he won't object." The director's gaze lingered on the clear handprint on my face. After a long silence, he finally sighed and handed me the transfer papers. "All right. Go home and get ready. You'll leave in 3 days with the technical team. If anything happens or you run into trouble, report it to us immediately." I gripped the thin sheet of paper tightly, my nose burning as I nodded hard. When I opened the door to our house that night, the cheerful chatter inside stopped instantly. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. Laura bit her lip, pretending to look uneasy. "Sarah, you're home. I was just about to leave. Please don't argue with David because of me," she said softly, standing up in a flustered act. Her face was pale, her tone meek, but the glance she shot me was full of challenge. "What can you do about it?" David stood beside her, looking annoyed, while his 2 children immediately stepped in front of Laura protectively, their faces tense and wary as if I were some kind of intruder. The 4 of them together, husband, ex-wife, and their 2 children, looked perfectly united, pushing me, the outsider, completely out of their circle. Of course, I understood. I had outlived my usefulness. I'd fed and raised them too well, and now they no longer needed me. I looked at Laura's self-satisfied expression and let out a cold laugh. "Didn't you say you were leaving? Then do it. Take your useless ex-husband and those 2 ungrateful brats with you, and get out." David's face darkened instantly. "All this because Sophie argued with you? You ruined her graduation celebration, and now you come home just to make more trouble? Do you always have to destroy everything whenever things don't go your way?" I answered calmly, "No. This time, I'll make sure everyone's satisfied. Sophie doesn't like attending that elite school, right? I've already contacted the school and withdrawn her enrollment." Sophie's eyes lit up immediately. Laura, on the other hand, looked utterly stunned. She hadn't expected I'd actually dare to cancel her daughter's admission. She shot up from her seat, glaring at me with fury. "Sarah, how dare you?" David's face went pale. "Are you insane? Do you know how hard it was to get her into that school?" he shouted. I ignored his yelling and turned instead to meet Ryan's eyes filled with the same contempt and disgust I had seen all my life. My voice was still cold as ice. "Didn't you always hate me for ruining your family?" I looked straight at Ryan, my tone steady. "Well, everyone's here tonight, so I'll give you what you want. I'll divorce your father and return to you a perfect, happy family. How about that?" The air in the room instantly froze. Silence hung heavy for a few seconds. Only Laura Chen looked visibly excited, her eyes gleaming as she turned toward David Miller with a barely hidden smile. I gave a small, bitter laugh. "What's wrong? Not satisfied?" Then I added lightly, "Oh, that's right. This house is under my name, not yours. The name on the deed says Sarah, not Miller. So now all of you, get out of my house." That sentence set off David's fury like a spark in dry tinder. His eyes flared with rage, and he slammed his glass down so hard it shattered across the floor. "Sarah Thompson," he bellowed. "How long do you plan to keep this up? Divorce? Ha! Divorce my ass! We were never legally married to begin with. What the hell are you divorcing from?" His words struck me like a lightning bolt. David's lip curled in contempt. "You think anyone besides me would want a barren woman like you? Remember this. I'm the one who didn't want you." For a long moment, I couldn't move. My mind went completely blank. I just stood there stunned, as if the world had stopped spinning. David sneered, then grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her toward the door. "Let's go. We'll see who can't live without whom. Don't come crawling back to me crying later." As Laura walked past me, she deliberately bumped her shoulder hard into mine. I stumbled backward, unprepared, and the contents of my purse spilled onto the floor. David's hurried steps halted, his eyes fixed on a single piece of paper lying near his foot, the transfer notice. His head snapped up, and before I could react, his hand clamped tightly around my arm. "What's this transfer notice?" he demanded, his voice trembling with anger. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me about this? Why the hell did you apply to transfer to some remote area without saying a word?" His grip tightened painfully. "What are you trying to do?" But I wasn't even listening anymore. My mind echoed only one sentence. We were never legally married. There's nothing to divorce. If that was true, then what had my entire life been? I stared at David blankly. Every breath I took burned, the metallic taste of blood rising in my throat. I shoved him away and ran into the bedroom. My hands trembled as I pulled open the bottom drawer, taking out the family registry book and the marriage certificate. The red booklet glared at me under the light. My vision blurred as I stared at the faded stamp. And suddenly, I laughed. That was when I remembered the day we registered our marriage. I'd been too busy with work to take time off, and David told me he had a connection at the Civil Affairs office, said all he needed were our photos and IDs. We didn't even have to go in person. And I believed him. I trusted him completely. I never once suspected that he could have faked the entire thing. David followed me into the room and saw the worn red certificate trembling in my hands. A flicker of guilt flashed across his face. He crouched down in front of me, his voice hoarse. "Sarah, I didn't mean to deceive you. It was just an accident. We were both so busy back then, I figured it didn't matter. Whether we had the certificate or not, we'd still spend our lives together. You understand, don't you?" I lifted my gaze to the man who had ruined my life. He had lied to me for years, stolen everything I had, my time, my love, my dignity. That fake marriage certificate might have been the only thing he'd ever done for me. I tightened my grip on the booklet, then suddenly raised my hand and slapped him across the face. Hard. "Thank you, David Miller," I said coldly. "If not for this fake certificate, I'd have to figure out how to legally divorce you. But now, there's no need." I stepped back, my voice steady and final. "We were never married. From now on, whatever happens in my life, you have no right to interfere." That slap carried every ounce of humiliation, anger, and heartbreak from my entire life. David Miller's face snapped to the side, a bright red handprint burning across his cheek. He immediately grabbed my wrist, his voice hoarse and trembling with rage. "You said I have no right?" he growled. "Sarah, do you even know what a common-law marriage is? As long as I don't agree to let you go, you'll always be my wife. You'll never escape me, not in this lifetime." I let out a cold, mocking laugh and met his eyes. "Common-law marriage?" I sneered. "Don't be ridiculous, David. That's fraud. What you did was marriage deception. From now on, stay the hell away from me, or I'll make sure you rot in prison." His face went pale. He stared at me as if I were the one who'd betrayed and ruined his life, his eyes filled with disbelief and wounded pride. At the doorway, Sophie Miller was clinging to Laura Chen's arm, her chin lifted arrogantly. She turned to David and said, "Dad, let's go. I don't want to stay in this filthy dump. When I become rich, when I'm a famous designer, I'll buy you and Mom a huge mansion. As for that evil, controlling woman, Sarah Thompson, just let her rot and die here." For some reason, her words finally struck a nerve in David. His face darkened with fury. "What kind of attitude is that?" he barked. "Apologize to your mother right now." Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes as she screamed back, "I'm not apologizing. She's not my mother." I watched their little father-daughter act and couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, hollow laugh. "It's fine," I said. "Don't apologize. I wouldn't want it anyway." David gave me a pitying look, as if he were being generous for once. "Sarah," he said gently, "it's not your fault she won't apologize. I'll talk to Sophie and Ryan later. I'll make sure they treat you like their real mother. As for that technical support transfer, can you cancel it? The kids still need you." The audacity of this man made my skin crawl. I snatched the fake marriage certificate off the table and smacked it hard against his face. "Get out, you piece of garbage," I shouted. "Did you really think I was your free babysitter? Say one more word, and I swear we'll all go down together. I've suffered enough, and I won't let any of you live comfortably while I'm still breathing." David's face turned from pale to green. Laura rushed to his side, helping him up and dragging him toward the door. Just before he left, he turned back one last time, his eyes hollow and dark. "Sarah," he said softly, "think about it. Who else would ever want you besides me?" Even now, he couldn't stop trying to break me. My face hardened. I grabbed whatever was nearest, a glass, maybe, and hurled it straight at him. David ducked just in time, stumbling clumsily before finally bolting out the door. 3 days. That was all I needed. 3 days to settle my affairs, to leave behind this house and this life. David, in his arrogance, still thought I was just angry, that eventually I'd come crawling back to him in apology. He couldn't have been more wrong. On the overnight train heading south, the scenery outside the window shifted endlessly. Forests, mountains, rivers flashing by under the moonlight. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks slowly drowned out the chaos of my past. In my previous life, I'd been imprisoned in a bed for 15 years. Unable to move, unable to breathe freely. But now I was inhaling real air. For the first time in forever, I was truly free. No one would ever cage me again. After more than 10 hours of travel, the train finally arrived in the southwest. As soon as I stepped onto the platform, I spotted a group of people waiting with a sign that read clearly, "Welcome, Technical Support Team from Ocean City Factory." I walked toward them. One of the men froze for a moment when he saw me, then smiled warmly and extended his hand. "You must be Miss Sarah Thompson?" I nodded. He chuckled, friendly and genuine. "We've been waiting months for the senior technician from headquarters. Things are tough out here. The conditions aren't great. Thank you for coming all this way." He offered his hand again. "I'm Michael Chen, from the local branch. It's an honor to have you here." As we began walking, the dry mountain air brushed against my face, and for the first time in years I felt something new stirring inside me. Something like peace. Michael Chen spoke as we walked, introducing the state of the branch factory, while occasionally chatting about the customs of the Southwest. "Miss Thompson," he said, "this facility hasn't been open for very long. Many technicians come here, but most can't handle the conditions. They always find a way to request a transfer out. But you," I smiled faintly, "this is what you call hardship?" My last life had been 1,000 times worse, trapped in bed, unable to live or die, suffocating in my own body. Compared to that, this was freedom. The sky was clear, the wind was fresh, and for once, everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. Nothing could break me anymore. When we entered the factory, the roar of machines filled the air. Workers were busy at every station, their voices loud and energetic. I took a deep breath, changed into my protective gear, and threw myself into work. For 3 years, I stayed at that factory. The director called me back several times, but I refused each time. Year after year, I persevered. Through my effort, and with the help of Michael Chen and the senior workers, the plant's productivity rose steadily. Before long, the Southwest branch became one of the best in the industry. When headquarters finally held an award ceremony, I was chosen as one of the top representatives to return to Ocean City and accept the honor. Before I left, Michael grinned at me, his tone half teasing, half sincere. "Don't forget us here in the Southwest, okay? Don't let those fancy folks back at HQ lure you in with sweet promises. I'll be waiting for you to come back. I'll even come meet you myself." I met his bright, earnest eyes and couldn't help but smile. Ocean City was so different from the Southwest. Warmer air, more humid breeze. I didn't know how David Miller found out what time my train would arrive, but the moment I stepped out of the station, I saw him standing by the roadside waiting. An immediate wave of disgust rose in me, and my face turned cold. It had been 3 years since we'd last met. His hair at the temples was already streaked with gray. In my previous life, I'd supported his entire family, let him live comfortably, even retire with the reputation of being a respected, charming teacher, adored by his students. He seemed stunned to see me, then quickly hurried forward, reaching out as if to take my luggage. "Sarah," he said hoarsely, "I heard you were coming back today. Was the trip hard? Have you been doing well all these years?" He gave a sad smile. "You haven't changed at all, but I have. I've gotten old." I stepped aside, avoiding his hand, and walked past him without hesitation. My voice was cold. "Move. I have nothing to say to you." He froze, speechless for a long moment, before hurrying after me to block my path again. "Sarah, are you still angry? You're really going to stay mad forever? You left home and went all the way to the Southwest just because I let Laura sit at the head of the table? You ignored me and the kids for 3 years because of that?" His tone turned pleading. "You weren't like this before." I sighed impatiently. "David, stop bothering me. Please." A flash of pain crossed his face. He pressed his lips together, his expression dark. "I just wanted to see you once, that's all." For a moment, I thought I had left all my hatred behind in those 3 years in the Southwest, But seeing his face again brought it all surging back like a flood. I gave a bitter, mocking laugh. "You're not at home with your lovely wife and sweet children? What are you doing here? Want to check if I still have money left to feed your family? Or do you just want to see if I'm still the same fool who let all of you drain me dry?" I took a step closer, my voice low and sharp. "Get away from me, you make me sick." Without waiting for his response, I turned and got into a cab straight to the factory. But as soon as I stepped out of the car, I froze. Laura Chen was standing at the front steps of the factory gate, glaring at me with pure fury. It took me a few seconds to recognize her. 3 short years. That was all it took to strip away the softness she once wore like a mask. The gentle, elegant woman I remembered was gone. Now her face was gaunt and twisted with resentment. The silk cheongsam she once loved so much hung off her like a wrinkled rag. Grease stains streaked across Laura Chen's once pristine dress. The moment she saw me step out of the car, her red-rimmed eyes widened, and she rushed forward to grab my hand. "Sarah Thompson," she cried, voice trembling. "Didn't you get transferred to the remote branch? How are you still living so well? Tell me, is David Miller sending you all his salary? Is that it?" Hearing such absurd words, anger flared hot in my chest. One after another, they all came to disturb my peace, all treating me as if I were still someone they could trample. I yanked my hand free and glared at her. "The meager salary David earns, is that what you're so obsessed with?" Laura's eyes went bloodshot as she lost all control. "You took all his money," she shouted shrilly. "If it weren't for you, I'd have enough to buy a decent dress. Pay me back, Sarah. If you don't, I'll tell everyone in this factory that you're a manipulative slut who seduced a man for money and love." My head throbbed. Her screeching buzzed in my ears like flies. Just then, Hannah, the young woman the director had sent to greet me, came running over. The disgust in her eyes was obvious as she snapped, "Get out of here, Mrs. Miller. Don't cause a scene in front of the factory." Laura froze, a flicker of fear crossing her face before she turned and stumbled away. Hannah sighed and looked back at me. "Miss Thompson, after you left, David and Laura remarried. They moved back in together and went around bragging everywhere about how happy they were." She shook her head. "But when word got to his supervisors, they weren't impressed. They said it was bad for his image, so they demoted him to logistics and cut his pay in half." I let out a low, ironic laugh. "When he lived with me, David didn't have to support anyone. He never gave me a cent of his salary. Every penny went straight to Laura. No wonder she thought he made so much money." Hannah went on. "That couple used to fake a divorce just to trick you, didn't they? Well, karma hit them fast. Now they're broke and fighting every day. I heard their son Ryan doesn't even have enough to eat at school. He's growing fast but faints from low blood sugar all the time. He didn't pass the college entrance exam, couldn't find a job, and now he just locks himself in his room all day." I stayed silent, but my jaw clenched tight. "David blames Laura for everything," Hannah continued. "He says she doesn't know how to earn money, that she wastes what little they have on clothes and makeup. And Laura, she's gone mad with frustration. She started accusing David of secretly sending you money, and even came here to the factory a few times to cause trouble." I could only shake my head in disbelief. "When their relationship was already falling apart," Hannah said, lowering her voice, "their daughter Sophie caused a scandal. She got pregnant. When she told Laura, Laura did some digging into the boy's background. She heard his father was a school principal. So she hid it from David, told Sophie to keep the baby, and then took her daughter to demand compensation, an engagement gift, a house, a car, even a teaching job for herself." I pressed a hand to my forehead. The headache was blinding. Sophie, the girl who had hated me all her life, who had despised me for sending her to that prestigious school, and now she had dropped out of a vocational program because of a pregnancy. Hannah gave a wry, pitying smile and leaned closer. "Turns out that boy wasn't the principal's son at all. He was just a poor kid boarding at the principal's house. When the truth came out, Sophie was expelled. Now she's home taking care of the baby." Her tone grew darker. "David lost his job soon after because of all the family drama. People in their neighborhood said they heard Laura screaming all night, said David beat her. After that, she hasn't been right in the head." I said nothing. During the award ceremony, I made sure to avoid the Millers completely, and as soon as it ended, I bought the earliest ticket back to the Southwest. I didn't want to stay a single minute longer. Their selfishness and cruelty had once cost me everything. I wasn't going to let them stain this new life too. I knew the Millers far too well. The moment I stepped out of the guest house, I ran straight into Sophie Miller, who was standing there waiting. The instant she saw me, tears welled up in her eyes, and she cried out, "Mom." That single word sent a chill down my spine. My skin prickled as if someone had dragged their nails down it. I didn't even bother arguing. I grabbed my suitcase, turned away, and said coldly, "I'm not your mother. You've got the wrong person." Sophie was holding a thin, pale baby in her arms, a child who looked weak and frail, clearly neglected after birth. She clung to my suitcase with both hands, her tears spilling uncontrollably. "Mom, please," she sobbed. "Help me this one time. I know I was wrong. You made me attend that elite school because you wanted the best for me, but I fought you. I disrespected you. I'm sorry, Mom. Please forgive me, just this once." I looked at her holding the baby, unable to pull my suitcase too hard for fear of hurting the child. I forced myself to stay calm. "What do you want, Sophie?" Hearing that, she hurriedly lifted the baby toward me, her voice trembling but urgent. "Mom, look, isn't he adorable? You couldn't have children of your own, right? Please, take him. Raise him like your own son. Pretend he's the child you were meant to have. Then maybe I can start over, and you'll finally have a child beside you. Isn't that good for both of us?" For a second, I just stared at her in disbelief. Then nausea rose up so sharply that I nearly vomited right there. In that moment, the memories of my previous life and this one overlapped. Her face, her words, the same cold selfishness that had once destroyed me. She hadn't changed at all. She was still the same heartless girl who had left me to die. I couldn't bear it any longer. I shoved her away, grabbed my suitcase, and stumbled down the stairs. Behind me, her hysterical screams echoed through the corridor. "Sarah Thompson, you hypocrite. You refused to raise my baby, and you dare say you treated me like your own daughter?" Even after I boarded the train, her shrill voice still rang in my ears. The nausea faded only as the city of Ocean City grew smaller and smaller through the window. I finally exhaled, a deep, trembling breath of relief. The heavy darkness that had clung to me for days seemed to lift, left behind with that cursed city. This time, I didn't tell anyone I was returning to the Southwest. I thought no one would come to meet me. But when I stepped out of the station, I saw Michael Chen standing by the gate, smiling as if he'd been waiting there all along. My eyes stung instantly. He stood there quietly, steady as ever, his smile warm. "Welcome home, Miss Thompson." I froze for a second before asking softly, "How did you know I was coming back today?" Michael's grin widened, his voice light. I didn't. I just come here every day, afraid you might show up one day and I wouldn't be here to see you." I lowered my gaze, unable to speak. Over the past 3 years I had come to understand his feelings for me, but I'd never dared to hope, never dared to trust anyone again. The wounds David Miller left behind had taught me to fear love itself. But after everything that happened on this trip, I finally understood. Michael Chen was not David Miller. If I let the pain from my past keep me locked away forever, doubting everyone who dared to care for me, then hadn't I allowed David to imprison me for life? Even after death and rebirth, in this life I wanted to be brave enough to choose. And if I chose wrong, I would be brave enough to bear it. I took a deep breath, raised my hand slightly, and said quietly, "It's too dark. I can't see the road." Michael hesitated for a moment, then reached out and took my hand gently. "Then let me guide you," he said with a smile. "We'll walk together, slowly." 1 month later, Michael Chen and I officially registered our marriage. I chose to make my home in the Southwest. 6 months after that, while I was training a new group of factory apprentices, a guard ran in, breathless, saying someone was looking for me. When I stepped out to the factory gate, I froze. Standing there, dusty and disheveled, was David Miller, and behind him were his 2 children. The moment he saw me, David's eyes brightened. He stumbled forward, his voice trembling. Sarah, Laura's dead, she's gone. Can't the 4 of us be a family again like before?" But the hopeful smile on his face froze instantly as his gaze dropped to my belly, slightly rounded beneath my uniform. David Miller's face slowly turned pale. The very person who had once diagnosed me as infertile, who'd mocked me as a stone woman and spread that rumor everywhere, was none other than his cousin, a nurse. When I became pregnant, I filed a formal complaint under my name, and she lost the medical license she had once been so proud of. Standing behind me, Michael Chen's expression darkened. His eyes were sharp and alert as he stared at the three disheveled figures in front of us, his stance protective, shielding me instinctively. I looked straight at David, my voice calm and cold. "What are you doing here?" He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his eyes filled with desperation and panic. "Sarah, please. I came to beg you to come home." I had already heard from Hannah months ago. She'd written me a letter, telling me that the Miller family had been in a car accident. Laura Chen and her child had died instantly. The other three survived, but something inside them had broken. Sophie, the daughter who once screamed that she wasn't mine, now cursed at doctors, claiming she was the dean of a medical university and demanding to stay in a VIP ward. Ryan, her brother, shouted that he was an athlete and refused to take any medication, insisting it would ruin his body. Only David remained silent, quietly arranging Laura's funeral, facing the wreckage alone. But I never imagined he'd have the audacity to come find me. I looked at him with the same coldness I'd once reserved for a stranger. "I have a home, David. I have a husband who loves me, and a child on the way." His lips trembled, a bitter smile twisting his face as cloudy tears rolled down his cheeks. "Sarah," he whispered, voice hoarse, "you spent almost your whole life by my side. It wasn't until you were gone that I realized who I truly loved. That house isn't a home without you. Please, come back." Behind him, the two children who had once cursed and humiliated me fell to their knees with a heavy thud. "Mom," Sophie cried out, "please come back to us." Their shamelessness made my entire body tremble with fury. My hands clenched into fists, but before I could move, Michael's arm wrapped around me, pulling me close. "It's all right," he murmured softly. "It's over now." The moment his voice faded, a team of police officers rushed in from behind, forcing the three of them to the ground. David struggled violently, screaming as they restrained him. "Sarah Thompson," he howled. I curled my lips into a cold, humorless smile. "The moment you stepped off that train, the police had already contacted me," I said calmly. "Did you really think you could kill Laura Chen, and with the help of your two filthy children, cover it up and get away with it?" David's eyes blazed with hatred, but tears streamed down his face. "It wasn't my fault. She deserved to die. It was her fault. She ruined everything between us. She made me a joke, turned our children into fools. It was all because of her. Sarah, please, let's start over. We can begin again, you and me." The police dragged the three of them away, their screams echoing through the quiet street. Only when they disappeared from sight did I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My knees gave out, and I collapsed into Michael's arms. Dusk had fallen. I clutched his hand tightly, unable to lift my head, afraid of what I'd see in his eyes. If he asked me, if he wanted to know? But he didn't. Michael simply held me close, his warm breath against my hair. His voice trembled slightly as he said, "Sarah, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. I'll never ask." That broke me. I buried my face in his chest and wept silently, my tears soaking through his shirt. 5 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The news of the death sentence for the 3 members of the Miller family arrived on the same day I lay in bed, watching Michael clumsily change our daughter's diaper. He named her Anna. Because, as he said with a gentle smile, peace is where we truly belong.